Our next artwork by Raphael is also our last artwork by Raphael. It was in the middle of completing this series of works that he died rather suddenly. The issues around his death are crazy scandalous. It was basically a week-long party of debauchery, and he died of exhaustion, and you can email me and I can give you more of the hot, juicy details, okay? But here we are looking at Raphael's Galatea. And this was one panel, or is one panel in a series of panels that are in the Sala di Galatea in the Chigi Villa. So here we are on the outside. The Chigi Villa was a small luxury palace built just on the other side of the river in Rome for the rich banker Agostino Chigi. Oh, Agostino Chigi, at the time of Raphael's working at this palace, was rolling in dough, and the Chigi family, who had a palace in the city proper of Rome, wanted something that was just an insane, opulent display of wealth and luxury. And so they have this pleasure palace built just outside the main hustle and bustle of Rome. And they hired Raphael to decorate many of the rooms. It's later bought by the Farnese family, and so it's also referred to as the Villa Farnese or Farnesina. Farnesina just means the smaller villa because, yep, guess what? The Farneses buy it from the Chigis, and they already had their own big palace in Rome, so this is their Farnesina, their smaller villa. Okay, that's the name of this space. But here we are looking at the Villa Farnesina, or the Villa Chigi Villa, and the room that we're going to be hanging out in is through the doors and to the left, the Sala di Galatea. So we're going to go through the doors and to the left, okay? So let's just pretend like we're invited by the Chigi family to have a crazy party one night. And we're going to walk through these doors and then we're going to go that way. Ooh, so this is the Sala di Galatea, which literally translates to the room of Galatea. And it got this name because of the panel we're going to look at, which was the only completed panel by Raphael before he died from literally too much partying. Here we are, a little bit closer. So the bottom level, or the bottom row of paintings in the Sala di Galatea is painted to look like fake tapestries. And then there are these scenes from mythology that reach on the second element or second level, and then the elaborately decorated ceiling with these gorgeous celestial bodies. We're going to look here at the Galatea, but before we zoom in closer, I want you to see that she was originally part of a two-part or two-panel scene. The two panels tell the story of Galatea, and while Raphael painted this one, he died before he could complete the second panel. Now the second panel and the rest of the room was completed by one of his best friends, but we're not going to look at the rest of the works. His best friend was great, very talented, but we're just going to look at Raphael today. So as the story goes between Galatea and this figure here, if we were alive and at the party at the Chigi Villa, holding our glasses of Chianti, we would recognize this as the story of Galatea as told by the Roman poet Ovid in his book called Metamorphoses. Now, in the book called Metamorphoses, Ovid tells of a giant cyclops shepherd, Polyphemus. This is Polyphemus. He is a shepherd, but he's also a cyclops, meaning he has one eye, a singular eye. And he lived on this island with his sheep. And he fell in love with a sea nymph named Galatea, And now a nymph is a minor mythical creature, and as a sea nymph, she would live on the oceans, but sometimes she would come to Polyphemus's island and rest on the shore, where he would see and watch her sunbathe. However, one day, a ship with a handsome man crash lands onto Polyphemus's island. Now you have to understand, Polyphemus is a giant, and he's big and strong, and that singular eye means he is singular-minded. He is simple-minded, and he is one who will not think of logic and reason, but of brute force, anger, and passion. And when the handsome young man's shipwreck lands on Polyphemus's island, wants to kill him. However, Galatea also sees this handsome human man, and she falls in love, and she rescues him, and they make love on the shore of the island. Polyphemus finds them, and he is enraged with jealousy and anger, and he takes a giant boulder and he smashes the handsome young man to bits. Galatea, in fear, runs off the island, and she flees on the ocean because she's a sea nymph, right? And here we see her fleeing away as Polyphemus watches her, and she looks back in absolute terror. She's pulled by dolphins on her shell chariot, and she's surrounded or accompanied by her fellow sea nymphs. We have these mermaids and mermen. Oh, wow, 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 wow. So that's the story that we're seeing here. Polyphemus, sad, dejected, after he's murdered her lover, and she runs away. Let's look at this in terms of the characteristics of a Renaissance painting. Do we have any linear perspective? No, darn it. Do we have any atmospheric perspective? No, darn it. I mean, like, really, where are we going to go with this, Raphael? Uh-oh, Raphael, too much partying. He's slipping. He's not doing the Renaissance thing. No, he's being even more sophisticated, because what he's giving us is a balanced composition without linear perspective, without atmospheric perspective. Look at the figures. Let's start at the top. At the top, we see these three winged, chubby creatures. These are cupids, and they, with their arrows, will shoot at people and either make them fall madly in love or in absolute horror and disgust. Now again, this is a lot of lead up or a lot of information, background information I have to give you. But if you were invited to the Chigi Villa, you would have already been educated in the classic Greek and Roman myths. You would already recognize those as cupids. And you would know that if Cupid hits you with a gold-tipped arrow, you will fall madly in love with the next person you meet. But if Cupid hits you with a lead-tipped arrow, you will fall into absolute horror and disgust for the next person you meet. And these three cupids are showing lead-tipped arrows, which they are going to shoot at Galatea as she looks at Polyphemus. So she is about to fall into absolute horror and disgust for him. Now, I said let's talk about this as a composition. These three figures all have their arms outstretched, right? In fact, they are all the same position, but in three different viewpoints. Do you see that? Raphael has given you one facing forward, one facing backward, and one tilted down. So he's given us a balance of three: forward, backwards, up and down. Raphael, you're so slick and sneaky. He does it again. He does it again with these figures. We have a sea nymph grasped in the arms of this merman. Look at that. Look at his sea legs, his fish legs, right? So they're twisted in this posture. And then look at on the other side. We have two more twisted in a similar posture. Okay, okay. And then let's think about the balance of Galatea herself. She's holding onto the reins of her dolphin-pulled chariot. She's facing forward, but she's turned her head backwards. And in fact, she stands in a really difficult twist or pose. I'm going to ask you to do it for me in your room. You don't have to if you don't want to, if you're embarrassed. But I encourage you to stand up. Stand up. Okay. All right. Now we're going to hold our dolphin reins. We're going to twist and look back at Polyphemus. And then check out her legs. Her legs are actually facing this way. And then we twist this way to grab the dolphins. And then we look back this way. So we're looking in three different positions. Our knees are facing forward, our arms are facing one way, and our head is facing the opposite way. What this does is it doesn't only create a balance of opposites, but it also is an exaggeration of balance. This type of exaggeration we would call a figura serpentinata, the serpentine figure. It's an exaggerated contrapposto. It's much more animated, it's much more dynamic, it's much more twisted. So she's hovering, weightless, on the shell, basically, as she's being pulled on the surface, and she's doing this very difficult, forceful twist. So we see a balance of opposites. Okay. So taking all those things into consideration, plus foreshortening, right? The angels coming in at these angles. Look at that adorable toe. That's a foreshortened view of the leg, right? Those are foreshortened views of her knees, or one knee. So he's giving us complicated postures, foreshortened angles, and then we have this harmony of balance in the figures' placement as well. Look at how these figures curve at the top, and then there's this curve at the bottom. So while we don't have linear perspective really to focus in on a vanishing point, we have this bow and this bow of shapes that frame Galatea in perfect harmony. Oh, one more. Look at these guys. Blowing his conch shell. We are supposed to imagine the sound that comes out of that, right? Just as when you see a mouth open, there's a sound coming out. If somebody's playing an instrument, you're supposed to hear it. And so we're supposed to hear the of that conch shell, right? And then the neigh of that horse. And then on the other side, we got a guy on a trumpet. So we hear the chaos, and then they balance each other. The conch shell being played to balance that trumpet being played. So there's so many balances of composition that are going on here. And of course, that's what makes Raphael Mr. Perfect. As we would be standing in the Chigi Villa, we'd be like, yes, drinking our wine, going, oh, Raphael, you're so smart. Let's go party. Let's go party with Raphael.